Hello, my fellow scientists. Welcome back to another episode, if you will, of Science is Everywhere, the home edition. My name is Marie Lenka, and I'm with the Children's Discovery Museum of San Jose. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about measurement, and more specifically, non-standard measurement. So, what do we mean by that? Well, most of the time, when we are outside, we do not carry around a ruler or something like this. Some of us may have a tape measure for in construction, things like that, but most of us aren't going to be carrying these things around. So as scientists and just as people in everyday life, how do we measure things when we're outside and we don't have these tools with us? Well, today we're going to explore a little bit more of how to make your own tool while you are out in the world, or think about what you might use looking at home and then imagine it when you're out going to certain places. So for example, if you were going to fill a space with something, like you had a shelf and it could only take a toy that was so big, how could I think about that in ways that I could remember, so when I go somewhere, I can measure in my head without having a ruler or something like that with me. So we're going to split this up into two parts. First part is we're going to go over non-standard measurement and how to do it and what it looks like. And then I'm going to challenge you to take a look at maybe a measurement we're hearing a lot about and how to do that at home, keep it in your head, and then have it wherever you go. So it's going to be basic breakup and then go ahead and give a little bit of a boost, because we always like to do that. We always like to push the envelope just a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at some things that I might want to measure. So let's do that. All right, my fellow scientists. So how are we going to do this? So we're going to need a couple of different things, and actually we're going to need a group of things. So first you're going to want an object you want to measure. We're going to start real easy with just a pencil, and then we'll go from there. But then how am I going to measure this? Because you may see inches along here. This is what I use to quilt, but this is just kind of a background to make these objects show up a little bit better. Let's pretend those lines aren't there. So what I'm going to need is groups of things that are the same size, that are standard size to each other. So what are some examples of that? Well, we'll start with something pretty simple, and those are paper clips. You can measure with paper clips. Kind of crazy, right? So you'll notice these are all the same size, and these are the big ones, the trombone ones, but you can use smaller ones as well. Something else that you can use are, you guys recognize these? We use these a lot. Especially if you're in kindergarten or first grade, you may have been using these quite a bit. These are pennies. Let me see if I can get it a little bit closer. Can't tell the year, but there you go. And you'll notice, again, these are all the same size, so I don't have quarters or dimes or nickels or anything like that mixed in with it. They're all pennies, so they're all the same size. But my favorite, and the one that I'm going to use today, at least for the smaller stuff, are Legos or Duplos. Now you'll notice again, these are all the same size. They're different colors though. Is that okay? Absolutely. What we need is something that is the same size, not necessarily the same color. So if you get things that are different colors like this, that's totally fine. Again, if you take a look, they're all the same size. And you can always experiment with these and make sure that, okay, yeah, they're the same size there. They're the same size there. And just kind of take a look that way. Okay, so now that I made a big mess, we're going to clean up just a little bit. And let's start again with this pencil. And I'm going to leave my Legos out. And if you're third, fourth, and fifth grade and you want to use smaller Legos, is that okay? Yeah, you got it, absolutely. Again, as long as they're the same size. We know that Legos come in different sizes. Okay, so for this pencil here, how I'm going to measure this is I'm going to put these along each other. And there's 3 rules that you want to make sure that you follow. First of all, you want them end to end. So I'm going to use these ends like this. Can you use these ends and stack them together this way? Sure. But I'm going to do it this way just because it's a little bit easier for you to see. Okay, so taking a look here, I'm going to put my first one down, and that brings me to another rule. We want to make sure that it is right on the end of that pencil. I know that's kind of hard to see, and I apologize, I'm using a webcam, but we want to make sure that it's right on the edge there and not too far this way or not too far this way. Okay? And we're going to make sure that when we put the second one there, it's really close. It is touching, in fact, so there's no space in between them. Okay? And there's also no overlap. Overlap means that they're kind of flopped over like this. Now, if we were using a paper clip, that's a little bit easier to see. They go overlapped all the time. We want to make sure they're in a straight line. And again, see how they're touching and there's no space in between. That's what we want to make sure. Okay, so taking a look here, I'm going to put these two. So why don't you take a guess? There's two here, and then we've got a little bit more space. So I'll pause here for just a second, talk with a partner if you have one, or you can think by yourself. Scientists do both. And see if you can predict, looking at those two, if I was to follow those other two rules, make sure they're end to end, and there's no overlap. Oh, and I forgot another rule. They need to be in a straight line. So we're not going to go off like this. I'm going to make sure straight line, no space, no overlap, and on those edges there. I actually gave a little bit more away. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to guess. All right, let's find out. We've got 1, 2, 3. Again, end to end. Here's 4. And let's use another green one. There's 5. So it's about 5 Duplo Legos long. And we'll say these are square ones. Okay, so that's how to do this. Now let's look at this more like what we may be using. Because pencils are cool to practice with, but chances are you're not going to be measuring a pencil for something. All right, what if I had one of these? I'm sure none of you have seen these before, right? I have my cell phone and I'm thinking, okay, I need to stick it in a certain pocket or a purse or store it somewhere. I'm not quite sure how big this is. Okay, I'm gonna give this a go with my Legos. Okay, so once again, lined up on that edge, and I'm gonna go right next to it, leaving no space in a straight line and not overlapped. So there's 2. What do you guys think? Again, take a look. And I'll just leave it at 2 this time. I did 3 last time. All right, do you have your guess? All right, here we go. There's 3, and I've got some buttons I need to work around. Make sure that still lines up at the bottom. Okay. Here's 4. And, ooh. Okay, so it's a little bit less than 5. It's not exact. Is that okay? Sure, it's okay. It's not always going to line up, and that's perfectly fine. We don't walk around measuring everything in Legos or paper clips or pennies all the time, so you may need to think about this. Okay, so let's say we need to go something bigger, though, because, again, you may not be thinking in Legos for something this size. What if I had something bigger? This is one of my favorite pop-up books. Okay, I want to know whether or not this is going to fit on a shelf in my house. Okay, it's really cool. And to me, in my head, it makes sense to think about these guys, the Lego size, because I work with these a lot. So this is easy for me to imagine if I was, let's say, in the middle of a bookstore thinking, okay, is this actually going to fit? So I'm just going to put 1 down here. And here we go. I'm going, making sure it's right on that edge. And now, taking a look there, why don't you go ahead and predict, what do you think, how tall is this? Would this fit on my shelf? And let's say my shelf is 13 Legos tall. So anything bigger than that's not going to fit. Take a guess. All right, do you have it? Okay, no changing. Here we go. There's 2, 3, and this is moving a little bit. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh no, I ran out. What do I do? Well, we don't panic. We can take this bottom one, because we know it's already lined up at the bottom, and go up here and not move that line, but make sure there's no space. And there we go. So here's our imaginary one we just moved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Would this fit on my 13 Lego tall shelf? It would. So thankfully I can take this home with me. Okay, so now that we've kind of got an idea of how to do this non-standard form of measurement, now we're going to kick it up a notch and make it a little bit harder, because there's a certain measurement that we keep hearing that would be really great to have in our heads in everyday life right now, and actually just really cool, period. All right, you guys ready to move again? Here we go. All right, my fellow scientists. Holy cow, you got tall. Okay, so we are going to be looking at yet another piece of measurement that you may be hearing a lot about. So this is the length of 6 feet, and you may be hearing that a lot nowadays. But when you're outside, you're not carrying around either 6 rulers or 2 meter sticks. It's just usually not something that we're doing. So what we're going to do right now is come up with some non-standard ways and kind of push ourselves to figure out how maybe we can remember this when we're not around something that's this official. So really quick, if you don't have either 6 rulers or 2 meter sticks, that's perfectly fine. If you go ahead and look back at our bodies or systems in sync, our nervous system and our muscular system, I go through how to make these at home using just pieces of boxes, as well as some tape and some pens, crayons, that type of thing. So you don't need to have these at home. And then once you get 2 of them made, they're really fun to use in this way. Okay, so how am I going to remember this measurement when I'm outside? Well, I'm going to use the tools that we talked about in order to kind of get an idea in my head, so when I go outside, I can remember. So first thing that we talked about was we need some things that are all identical. Okay, well, I could use Legos here. I could use paper clips here. I could use pennies here. In fact, I challenge you to go ahead and measure 6 feet with pennies. I would love to see what that measurement is. But realistically, with what we're doing right now, you're not going to watch me line up that many pennies. That would take a long time. So I'll leave that up to you scientists who want to push yourselves a little further. But what I do have here are some things that you might find around the house, as well as something that's just fun. So I'm going to make sure that, again, those things are identical. And if I don't have multiple things, we kind of talked a little bit about is if you run out of things, what you can do to still use that non-standard measurement. You just have to remember as you're going. So first and foremost, the thing that I have with me right now are my shoes. So I'm going to take those off. I'm going to be in my socks for a minute, and that's okay. We make sacrifices for science. All right, now, these are standard measurement to each other. They should be the same size. And I'm going to use these to measure my 6 feet. Now, I only have 2 of them. I don't have a bunch. So what I can do is what we kind of did with our Legos is go ahead and take one and move it down. But that also means that I have to keep in my head my total number as I go. And I can always do this experiment more than once to verify that I have the number that I need. Okay, so following our non-standard measurement rules, we're going to make sure that it's at the edge. We're going to make sure the objects are end to end. There's no space. There's no overlap, so I don't have shoes that go like this. And they're in a straight line. So they're straight line like this, not like that. I may walk like this sometimes, but I want to make sure that I measure straight. Okay, so going to the very end here, And make sure that's lined up. So that's one shoe. There's two shoes. Now I've already run out. Oh no, no panic. We can take this one. But again, I have to remember 1, 2. I'm gonna put my hand here to kind of show the edge to make sure they're still end to end. That's 3 and 4, 5, 6. Ooh, it's not exact. Is that okay? Yeah, it's not. It's totally okay. All right, about, what would you say, 6.5 shoes. So that would tell me that if I was 7 shoes away from something, that there's my 6 feet. Okay, but this may not be something that we're thinking about. Okay, let's get rid of our shoes. And I'm just gonna hang out down here in my socks. Okay, something that we have an abundance of in the house, cans. Okay, you may be doing this as well. Again, finding things around your house. Science doesn't have to be something that's really expensive or that we have to run out and go and get. It can be right inside your house. So I'm gonna go ahead and put one here. Now taking a look, again, making sure it's right on the end. Now, I'll give you a second, now that you can see the entire length of 6 feet, take an estimate on how many cans it's gonna take to get from there to there. And again, remember, there may not be a whole number at the end, and that's totally okay. So for my 4th and 5th graders out there, and even my 3rd graders, you got your fractions handy, now's the time to use them. So I'll give you a second to think about that. And to give you a little bit of a hint, 1 can is about 5 inches. So think about if you've got 6 feet, and there's 12 inches in each of those feet. And that's 5 inches. Now we're really getting mathematical. Love it, math and science together. Fabulous combination. Give you a few more seconds. And again, this is just a guess. Is it okay to guess wrong? Yeah, totally fine to guess wrong. All right, so let's find out. There's 1. I'm gonna make sure these are end to end. There's 2, 3. And you see how they're also going in a straight line? They're not going out like this. Okay, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you guess 10 or less, we're about to pass you up. Okay. 11, 12, 13. Did we go higher than 13? We're about to break that. Okay. 14. It's about 15. So about 15 cans. There's your 6 feet again. Okay. So now that we have that done, let's do something silly. And sometimes the silly stuff is what you're going to remember most. So let me clean up my cans real fast. And something that I will note, that if you try to use cans, you have a lot of cans around, make sure that they're washed out. You don't want to put them on the floor and have leftovers. Okay, almost there. All right, now I'm going to move this back. And let's make sure you can still see that on the camera. Okay, there's a reason why I'm moving this back. You'll find out in just a second. All right, you may have remembered me saying that we are a Lego family here. Here we go. That is what I'm going to use to measure, because this I will remember when I go outside, because it's just weird. And sometimes that's the best way to do it. All right. So I only have one of these, unlike my shoes, the cans, or anything like that. So I'm going to need to go end to end and I'm going to have to really use my hand in order to see where it stops. So when I go ahead and move it, I can keep that measurement there. And what you can do also is if you want to use like a pencil or something to mark your place, you can go ahead and do that. So let's see. Actually, you know what? I have a pen. I'm going to go ahead and use that. Okay. You guys ready for this? So here is, I'm going to make sure it's at the end. There's one. And I'm going to put this right here so I can kind of see where this was when I move it. Okay, so there's one. Move it very carefully. There's a lot of moving parts. Okay. There's two. Move along. Right on the edge there. Now it may be a little bit harder to keep this one straight, so you can even like move it over so it's actually on the yardstick just a little bit. That's totally fine. Okay, there is three. And that's about four. So I have about four of my Lego sets to go ahead and get my 6 feet. And again, I'm going to remember this because it's just silly, and that's totally fine. You can have fun and do science and do math in this case at the same time. It's totally fine. All right. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to move my lovely Lego set so I can move this. We hope you enjoyed this session of Science is Everywhere, the home edition, from your very tall stance. Thank you again for tuning in. The Children's Discovery Museum really does appreciate your time, and we'll be broadcasting again. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are what we're doing. And again, we have reading, we have science, we have art, and sometimes we mash all the things together, kind of like what we did today, just because it's a little bit more fun. So thanks again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you like this, go ahead and like it here on Facebook. We're also going to make sure that we're sending out emails, so you can go to www.cdm.org and sign up for updates, as well as any donations. We are bringing this to you for free because we are staying at home and taking care of ourselves, and we want to make sure that we're still serving the community, but every little bit helps, and we do appreciate those who have. So again, tune in Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and thank you again for joining us for science. And now, hopefully, you will be the same height in just a second.